Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I will be speaking in Thai language. In 10 years' time, probably I will be speaking English fluently. But today I will be speaking in Thai. And I'd like to thank my previous speakers, wonderful speeches. Thank you very much, and I'm grateful for being invited here. I'm from Bangkok, Thailand. I'm not a smart person, but as one working person. But here, as I look at the society, I do have a very important way of looking at society. And what I have done, and my experience and my perspective, I'd like to share them with you. And I hope what I'm going to present to you, I hope that will be meaningful to you, those of you who are here. And then after I go back to Thailand, I will be making a lot of use of what I learned from you today. And what is the Thailand situation right now? During the past 10 years, Thai has changed a lot. New generation people are creating their own culture. In the past, younger people wanted and influenced by cultures from New York, from Tokyo, and they were inspired by that, and they just adapt them as they were. But now, the Thai people are beginning to think that they have to show their own and themselves, and to express themselves in a free manner. For example, in Chiang Mai, Bangkok, or in many different places, we can see the creativity and slow life. And clean food is liked, and the motorcycles is popular, and the flea market is very much popular, and the food truck is popular. And then even women like to have the six-pack muscle these days. And in Thailand, in the past, the influencers were the artists. Those who affected people were just the actors and actresses. But now influencers are the ones who influence people in Thailand now. They are not just showing what they create in Bangkok, in many different places in Thailand. For example, Chiang Mai, Khon Kaen, and Hajai in the southern part of Thailand. Those are the Thai influencers, designers, creators, and then directors are called influencers, and they are more powerful than the celebrities in Thailand. And they are the ones who have attention from young people, and they are seen as the opinion leaders. For example, writers, stylists, and rocker, and TV personnel, producers, and photographers. And those people in the past were not looked at as the influencers, but now they are popular. But in the past, doctors, teachers, military people, and business people, and accountants, they were the ones who had power. But now, young people are now focusing upon the influencers' profession. Those influencers do have a lot of power, and they can create a lot of income. And currently, the trend is that in Thailand, flea market is so popular. Every day there is flea market taking place here and there. In many different places, the flea market is being held. For example, at the port, or the warehouses, or the soccer stadium. Creative people can create flea market in a very unique ones. Not just the shopping that you can enjoy at the flea market, you can enjoy the design atmosphere. And the influencers can be involved in design in many different ways. For example, daytime flea market. Venue is different. On the very top, it's a vintage clothes or furniture flea market. And then the smart-looking warehouse is looked for and found to host the flea market. And Thai, it is beginning to be cool, so we'll have more and more flea markets, so people can find good flea market for their own taste. And Thai economy is not so thriving now, but they can find flea market which suit them. The designers and stylists come here because they can find the old clothes at a very reasonable price. 100 baht, 300 baht, so that like 300 yen or 600 yen price tags are popular. And the sponsors take part there and they conduct some events because it has power to attract many people. And this kind of flea market can get big sponsors. And also there's another trend in Thailand, social network. It is so popular. The Facebook, Instagram, every kind of SNS is so popular. For example, every day, whatever you eat, everything can be photographed and then up it into the Instagram. But influencers do have more than 100,000 followers. Therefore, the Thai big companies use social network for their marketing work. All over Thailand, Instagram is used, and influencers is using Instagram as if it is their own private the marketing media. Now I'm going to introduce myself, what I have done and what I am thinking. 11 years ago, I've started Cheeze magazine. I created it, I founded it. This is for young people. It's to introduce the street culture. And 5 years later, I founded the magazine called Looker for men, the street culture magazine. And 3 years ago, I've noticed that I'm not paying much for, spending much for, or people are not spending much for books. So I created a free paper called Snack. It's in the cafe. So wherever is a book, I looked into that, and then I created a free paper. And I do have a big projects, for example, Cheeze Hour. And the Cheeze Award, that is the award for the wonderful fashion. And for example, the ordinary people who do have a very good fashion sense with a good TPO sensitivity, and that person can get an award. And also, the flea market or the music festival can be done, and that is what I've been doing as well. And I do produce 2 TV programs and for the terrestrial wave, and also I do give the special guest lectures to inspire young Thai people. In Thailand right now, there are a lot of people who want to be encouraged and motivated. And I'm also a writer. I do write books. I love writing books. Those books, I hope, to become an inspiration for those who are suffering in society. I've done a lot of things in my past. In the beginning, when I was a college student, I was a student, I started a vintage clothes shop, and then I became a graphic designer of a fashion magazine, and then I became an editor-in-chief of the fashion magazine, the editor, and then the editor-in-chief of the fashion magazine. And then, but I was hired as the editor-in-chief. But because I was hired, I thought I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do. So I wanted to create a magazine, I know how to create a beautiful looking magazine, and I can write. And then when I think about it, I began to think, I have to know what kind of things people want to know, want to read, what kind of magazines people want to read. So I decided to change my position to be a reader, not the one to show, but to read books. And I have to think about what's being liked by people. People like what, dislike what, or after school, where do they want to go, what kind of clothes that they want to wear, what kind of music they like, or in summertime, where do they want to go, which country. I wanted to know about the consumers' trends. That is what I have studied, and I collected the information, and that led me to think that maybe I can do anything that involves people. And responding to the needs of people, by doing so, I want to communicate what I want to communicate to people. Well, I think I'm not too sharp a person. That is what I'm telling myself. And I don't want to be compared with other people. I like to do something new all the time. I look at the bookshelves or at the bookstore and looking for something that is new and something that nobody is doing. I like street fashion because in New York or in London or in Tokyo, there are street fashion of fashions in New York. That is very much New York, but London and Tokyo as well. But in Bangkok, that kind of story isn't there. So in 11 years before, I've started the magazine to introduce the street fashion in Thai. This is what I have introduced. Maybe in 30 years in the future, this magazine will be a material to look into the Thai's fashion history. And this can be utilized to actually foresee the country in the future. And what I do is actually to look into the trend of the consumers. And the influencers are the ones which communicate who communicate what I want to communicate. For example, Thai's trend fashion is like this. And then there are 4 levels of people. First, at the very top, innovators are there. And the next level is the early adapters. And the third is early majority. And the fourth is late majority. Those first 2 groups of people, for example, the second group chases the first group, and the third group follows the second group, and the fourth group follows the third group. But I've decided to work together with the first and the second groups. And the influencers are the power of society, especially in Bangkok. For example, the events or television productions or magazines, those things that I'm doing. Everything is actually the power, I hope, to create a new influencer. I'm not just looking at Thailand by itself, not just Bangkok. There are very interesting cities. For example, Chiang Mai, Khon Kaen, Hajai. There are various cities. They are very much different from one to the other. I should be doing things which are fit to each city, because that particular city should work to make use of its power of its locality. So we cannot use the same concept to do the events in different cities. And it's not just Thailand. I want to bring Bangkok culture to Tokyo, and I want to bring Tokyo culture to Bangkok. But at the same thing, I want to do the same thing with Singapore and Kuala Lumpur. And I hope those things can be done in the near future. Thank you very much.